I'm not ashamed. Why is the place where bitter water was found called Marah? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Exodus on walking the Bible. The glory of his cross. If you have a Bible with you, turn to Exodus chapter 15. We're going to be reading from verses 20 to 27. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Exodus chapter 15, beginning at verse 20. Then Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took the timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. And Miriam answered them, Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea. Then they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Now when they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. And the people complained against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? So he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree. When he cast it in the waters were made sweet. There he made a statute and an ordinance for them, and there he tested them and said, If you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you which I have brought upon the Egyptians. For I am the Lord who heals you. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 wells of water and 70 palm trees. So they camped there by the waters. In our last 2 episodes, we have been discussing the Song of Moses, or the Song of the Sea, that was sung by the children of Israel to God immediately after crossing the Red Sea and seeing their deliverance by God from the Egyptians. This song was a song of praise to God for all that he had done for them. Coming now to verses 20 and 21, we get the Song of Miriam. Miriam is described here as the sister of Aaron, which also makes her the sister of Moses. Miriam must be older than both her brothers because of the narrative found in Exodus chapter 2, but the Bible does not tell us how much older. According to Exodus 7:7, Aaron is 3 years older than Moses, and so it is quite possible that Miriam is 3 to 4 years more older than Dad. Jewish tradition has her being 3 to 4 years older than Aaron. Along with being Moses' sister, she's also called a prophetess. What does that mean? It means that God spoke his words through her. From this passage, it appears that God spoke through Miriam, but it was to the women of Israel and not the men. I could not find any passage speaking of Miriam that would say otherwise, and so it would be unwise to assume that she did. God can use women in any way that he chooses, but seemingly here, and then definitely in the New Testament times, he has restricted their role to not include that of leadership. They can be teachers for sure, but 1 Timothy 2:12 and 1 Corinthians 14:34 says that they do not lead in the church, nor take the lead in teaching in the presence of men. That means their teaching is largely confined to women and to children, as Titus 2:4 and 1 Timothy 5:10 would say. Back at Exodus 15, we find that Miriam took the timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. Since this is an Old Testament passage, this does not authorize the church to either engage in instrumental music or religious dancing. Such was authorized in the Old Testament, but not in the New Testament. It should also be noted that these dances were joyful dances done among the women alone. They were not the lascivious, lustful dances that we see performed today. Her song was that of immense praise to Jehovah. It is shorter than the Song of Moses, but carries with it the same power and praise. It just goes to show us that quantity does not always trump quality when it comes to worshiping God. Coming now to verses 22 to 27, we return to the narrative of the children of Israel traveling to Mount Sinai. We know this to be true, even though it has not been announced yet in our readings. Having crossed the Red Sea at the Gulf of Aqaba, we have the children of Israel in what we would call Saudi Arabia today. It is said that there they went out into the wilderness of Sinai. If you recall from Genesis 16, verse 7, it is a spring on the way to the wilderness of Shur that God met Hagar as she was fleeing from Sarah. Genesis 25:28 would describe Ishmael's descendants as living from Havilah as far as Shur, which is east of Egypt as you go towards Assyria. From the description of this land, we know that the wilderness of Shur must be in Arabia and not in what we call the Sinai Peninsula today. As you can see on our map, the wilderness of Shur is just to the east of our crossing point of the Red Sea. Although it is a flat land in some areas, it is quite mountainous the further east you go, which is why the children of Israel have to travel around these mountains to get to Mount Sinai. It is then said that after 3 days' journey into the wilderness, they found no water. When they got to the place that would be known as Marah, they could not drink the water there, for it was bitter. That is why the place is called Marah, which means bitter. As we will see time and time again, the children of Israel would complain, this time about a lack of water. God heard their cries and showed them a tree, which he then cast into the water, which made the water sweet. It is there that he made an ordinance and a statute with Israel, saying that if they obeyed him, that God would not bring any of the diseases that he brought upon Egypt upon them, for he was their healer. From Marah they traveled south to Elim, around some of the mountainous terrain, and camped there. At Elim it is said that there were 12 wells of water and 70 palm trees. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Exodus chapter 16, verses 1 to 8, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.